Hey everyone, Shad Dales. Thanks for checking into our latest TDR Trade to Black International Weekly Update presented by Prohibition Partners. This week, we head back across the pond to see how international cannabis markets are moving and evolving, and in some cases, struggling, to find a better balance. From Germany's oversupply dilemma to a growing gender gap in the UK's medical program to Colombia finally opening cannabis sales in pharmacies, and Lebanon, yes, Lebanon, long-awaited entry into the legal export game. There's a lot happening beyond North America right now, believe it or not. So let's get into our latest TDR International Weekly Recap presented by Prohibition Partners. All right, let's begin with Germany, and their medical cannabis industry is standing at a crossroads right now, believe it or not. Once viewed as Europe's most stable and profitable market for global producers, it's now showing clear signs of oversupply, putting pressure on prices and logistics. So according to Prohibition Partners, Germany's market value jumped from 435 million euro in 2024 to a projected 670 million euro in 2025, thanks to relaxed import rules and the rise of telemedicine. But that growth has triggered a flood of what? Oversupply. So between April and June earlier this year, medical flower imports rose 15% from 37.5 tons in Q1 to 43.3 tons in Q2. But by September, Germany had already hit its full import quota of 122 tons, forcing regulators to pause new licenses before lifting the annual cap to nearly 192.5 tons. So that fallout, it came quickly. Warehouses filled up, prices dropped, and expiry dates crept closer. So industry leaders are sounding the alarms right now. Stefan Fritsch, he's the CEO of a company called Grunhorn. It's one of Germany's major pharmaceutical cannabis distributors. He says many middlemen lack direct-to-patient infrastructure, leaving them with product that can't move. Fritsch's data shows a direct link between the surge in product SKUs and the decline in pharmacy prices. So this is a textbook sign of what? Oversupply. But still, there's another side of the story as well. Torsten Greif, he's the head of 420 Pharma. I'm sure many of you have heard of him before. It's a licensed German importer and manufacturer associated with Curaleaf, one of the world's largest cannabis companies. He says Germany is fast becoming a re-export hub. Large shipments are now being redirected to Poland, Switzerland, and the Czech Republic, and even in Australia. So that shift could turn Germany into the logistics backbone of Europe's cannabis trade, but not so fast. There are bottlenecks that are growing. Pharmacies are overwhelmed, online sales face new legal risks, and small operators say they can't survive without steady cannabis revenue. Growing pains across the world, isn't there? So Germany's next move, it's going to determine whether it becomes a sustainable integrated supply chain or it remains a high-volume, low-margin re-export market. So that remains to be seen. Germany needs to get this right because in a lot of ways in Europe, everything starts and ends with Germany. All right, let's now go across the channel and in the UK, where they face a different kind of imbalance. What do I mean by that? Well, 7 years after legalizing medical cannabis, the market is more mature, but women are still being left behind. What do I mean by this? Well, a Relief survey of more than 1,600 active UK patients found that nearly 70% were male and only 1.6% of all primary conditions treated were related to women's health. So that's an eye-opener. It's a major gap in conditions like endometriosis, menstrual pain, and menopause-related symptoms remain among the least treated in the UK medical cannabis space. Why is this happening? And if you look further, this isn't just unique in Britain. In Germany, men are more likely to receive formal prescriptions despite women reporting higher rates of chronic pain and migraines. Think about that. Even in Canada and in the US, women often rely on informal cannabis use rather than clinical prescriptions. So wow, I didn't know this, but now I know. Exports point to three main factors: limited research, physician hesitancy, and persistent social stigma around women's health and cannabis. Ironically though, 97% of patients in Relief study reported no serious side effects, and more than 65% said their quality of life, guess what? It improved. But most of those benefits are going to men right now. So this needs to change. So for the UK to truly modernize its medical cannabis system, regulators and clinics must close that gender gap by expanding education, collecting better data, and building clinical confidence around women's conditions. This is a must. All right, let's now head down to South America, where Colombia is finally making medical cannabis accessible to its own citizens. This was big news from a couple weeks ago. Back on October 27th, President Gustavo Petro signed Decree 1138. It officially authorized the sale of medical cannabis in pharmacies. So in case you don't know, this is a big milestone because Colombia has been an exporter in cannabis oil to markets like Germany and the UK since 2021. while domestic patients really had no access to it at all. So yeah, it's a big deal. So under this new system, pharmacies and even veterinary clinics can now sell approved cannabis products once cleared by INVIMA. This is the National Health Agency in Colombia. So for patients with neuropathic pain, chemotherapy-related nausea, or chronic insomnia, this reform, let's face it, is going to be a game changer. But it comes after years of frustration. Even though Colombia legalized medical cannabis in 2016, by 2024, fewer than 2,000 patients were actively prescribed cannabis in a country of, get this, 52 million. So as we look back between 2018 and 2021, investors poured then $250 million into Colombian cannabis, backing early movers like, remember this, Clever Leaves, Chiron Life Sciences, and Pharmaciello. And when domestic demand failed to grow, then guess what? Capital dried up soon after that. So now as we fast forward today, the Petro government hopes this new access model can help rebuild trust. They need it. For the next 2 years, only small and medium-sized growers, often rural social equity operators, will be allowed to supply the domestic market. This is important. I've been there. This is important to Colombians. Officials project patient numbers could rise tenfold by 2028, reaching up to 25,000 patients and generating between 25 and 35 million dollars in yearly sales. Still, execution, let's face it, it's going to be key. The Colombia Association of Industrial Cannabis Cultivators, they warn that fast-track licensing could sideline large EU GMP-compliant producers. Others also say the system still lacks digital tracking and clear tax incentives. Got to get this going. So if Colombia, let's face it, wants to get investors back, it'll need to improve. This reform isn't just symbolic. It has to deliver real patients, real prescriptions, and let's face it, real revenue. And finally here today, let's head to the Middle East in Lebanon, which has officially launched its long-delayed medical cannabis program 5 years after legalizing cultivation in 2021. Were you aware of that? I wasn't. So a new cannabis cultivation management committee, they will now oversee production, licensing, and export development. So really the whole objective here and the hope is simple: turn cannabis into an economic lifeline for a country in crisis. So according to McKinsey and Company, Lebanon could generate up to 1 billion euro a year from legal cannabis exports, which is a massive boost for a nation where over 80% of people live in poverty and the currency has lost 98% of its value since 2019. And you thought things were tough for you. But competing globally, as we know, it won't be easy. Lebanon has long been one of the world's largest producers of cannabis resin, but it's in the illicit market. So you need to turn that heritage into a pharmaceutical-grade export industry, and it will require modern labs, strict compliance, and let's face it, credible partnerships. That's a big number. Other nations show how hard that transition can be. When you look at Morocco, despite completing its first illegal cannabis export earlier this year, it still faces compliant gaps and piles, and I mean piles of unsold product. Afghanistan and Pakistan, both major historic growers, they remain locked out of global trade entirely. For Lebanon, credibility and consistency will make or break this effort. So if it can blend local expertise with modern oversight and really attract responsible investment, then let's face it, it could finally shift from a black market legacy to a legitimate global supplier. So I bring all this stuff up because this really gives you an idea as to how much the topic of cannabis is expanding across the world. So it's interesting because yes, we see a lot of conversation here in North America, but when you expand across the world, yes, cannabis going to be a huge medical market within the next 10 years globally. Over $83 billion, and we're just getting started. All right, everyone, that's it for our latest TDR weekly international recap presented by Prohibition Partners. Let us know in our latest episode if there's any information that caught you by surprise by leaving your comments below. And as usual, make sure to like, subscribe, and smash on that bell. Stay connected with us here at TDR. That's it for now. Enjoy your weekend, everyone. I'm your host, Shad Dales. I'll see you in the next video, and thanks again for watching.